There is a particular kind of suffering that rarely gets discussed. Not tragedy, not loss, not catastrophe. Something quieter. The suffering that comes from having no direction, no aim, no mountain to climb, no reason to endure what must be endured. At first, it doesn't feel like suffering at all. It feels like freedom. No obligations, no commitments, no responsibilities beyond the immediate demands of the day. You wake up, you go to work, you come home, you distract yourself, and repeat the process. And because nothing is obviously wrong, it can continue for years. But beneath the surface, something begins to happen. You start to drift. Not because you're weak, not because you're lazy, because human beings were never meant to drift. They were meant to orient themselves towards something, a direction, a purpose, a mountain worth climbing. And without it, life begins to fragment. I've lived on both sides of that divide. There have been periods in my life where I knew exactly what I was working toward. Training had meaning. Sacrifice had meaning. The difficult days had meaning. Not because they were enjoyable, but because they were connected to something larger. And there have been periods where that direction was missing. The difference was profound. The circumstances were often similar. The person was the same, but the experience of living was entirely different. Because purpose does something remarkable. It organizes. Without purpose, everything becomes equal. Every distraction, every opportunity, every impulse, every excuse, they all carry the same weight. And when everything carries the same weight, decisions become difficult. You begin moving according to convenience rather than conviction, comfort rather than meaning, reaction rather than intention. The result is a life that feels increasingly disconnected, not from other people, from yourself. When I think about this, I often think about climbing. Imagine walking into a climbing gym for the first time, not choosing a route, not looking at the wall, not identifying a destination, just grabbing random holds and moving. You might expend enormous amounts of effort. You might even feel exhausted. But you aren't really climbing. You're simply moving. Motion and progress are not the same thing, and yet many people spend years confusing the two. They stay busy, they stay occupied, they stay entertained. But they never stop to ask an important question. Where exactly am I going? Modern life makes this surprisingly easy. There is always another distraction, another notification, another obligation, another form of consumption. You can spend years reacting to life without ever consciously participating in it. And eventually, a feeling begins to emerge. A sense that something's missing. Not necessarily success, not necessarily happiness. Something deeper. A feeling that you are not living your own life. That you are capable of more. That some part of you remains unexplored. Many people try to solve this feeling with achievement. Others pursue comfort. Others pursue status. Others attempt to distract themselves from the feeling entirely. But the problem often remains, because the issue is not achievement, it is orientation. A compass matters more than speed. A person moving quickly in the wrong direction is not progressing. They're becoming lost more efficiently. And this is where things become interesting, because purpose is often misunderstood. People imagine purpose as a single grand mission, a perfect answer, a lightning bolt from the heavens, something dramatic, something obvious. In reality, purpose is usually discovered through engagement, through action, through participation, through paying attention to the things that call to you. For me, climbing became one of those things. Not because it solved every problem. It didn't. Not because it made life easier. It didn't do that either. But because it provided direction. The wall didn't care how I felt. The route didn't care about my excuses. The climb simply asked a question. Will you continue? And over time, that question became useful. Not only on the wall, in life. Because every meaningful pursuit eventually asks the same thing. Will you continue when progress slows? Will you continue when motivation disappears? Will you continue when the outcome remains uncertain? The answer to those questions begins shaping who you become. Not overnight, but gradually. And that's another thing people often misunderstand. Purpose does not remove suffering. Purpose transforms suffering. The climb is still difficult. The sacrifice still costs something. The uncertainty still exists. But now, those experiences belong to a larger story. They become part of something. And human beings can endure remarkable hardship when hardship has meaning. Without that meaning, even small obstacles can feel overwhelming. With it, extraordinary burdens can become bearable. That is why direction matters. Not because it guarantees success, but because it creates coherence. And coherence is becoming increasingly rare. Many people today possess information. Few possess orientation. Many know what they should do. Few know why they should do it. And without that deeper answer, discipline eventually collapses. Because discipline without direction becomes exhausting. Effort without meaning becomes draining. Achievement without purpose becomes hollow. At some point, every person must answer a simple question. What mountain is mine to climb? Not somebody else's, mine. Because the alternative is drift, and drift has a cost. Years pass. Potential remains unrealized. Regret begins accumulating. Life happens rather than being lived. That may be the greatest tragedy of all. Not failure, not hardship, not struggle. A life spent moving without direction. A life spent climbing a mountain that was never yours. Or worse, never climbing at all. The good news is that direction can be rediscovered. A compass can be repaired. A route can be chosen. The climb can begin again. You do not need perfect certainty. You do not need all the answers. You simply need enough honesty to recognize when you are drifting, and enough courage to choose a direction. One step, then another, then another. That is how every meaningful journey begins. Not with certainty, with orientation. Because human beings were never meant to drift. They were meant to participate, to engage, to become, to climb. And perhaps most importantly, to live a life they can one day look back upon and say, that mountain was mine, and I climbed it. If this video resonated with you, you can support the work by liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Take care out there in the daring unknown.